for organizing enlightening webinar online lecture series. We welcome you, ma'am. I also welcome all the esteemed colleagues joining us, and I also welcome all the students and all other dignitaries joining us. Now, before we begin with our today's sessions, I would like to request our senior most lecturer, the two Sri Sondavedi sir, and all other participants. I request.
Is it for my turn to speak? Hello?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
I don't know whether I'm clearly audible and visible or not. Anyway,
You are audible, sir, now.
very okay. Very good morning to all of you, and a warm welcome to late Niranjan Kumar Narjari Memorial Online Lecture Series. This is the 7th episode of the series that the IQAC cell of Kokrajhar Law College has been conducting for the last few days. At the outset, I take the opportunity to welcome our most distinguished guest speaker, Sri Chandranshu Chaturvedi, Honorable Additional District and Session Judge, Kokrajhar. At the same time, I also welcome our Principal Madam, the Chairperson and Principal of Kokrajhar Law College, Chairperson of IQAC Cell, along with Sri Suresh Busumatari, Coordinator of IQAC Cell, and respected faculty members, respected participants, and my dear student friends. Sri Chandranshu Chaturvedi sir, as far as I know him for last many years, he is a distinguished personality in the field of law. He is, in one hand, a professional, a very distinguished member in the judiciary. At the same time, he is an academician too. He has been very fond of making the students, especially the law students, to prosper in life, and on several occasions he has been trying to make the upcoming lawyers to know the technicalities about the court practice. So today it is an humble opportunity on my part to welcome you, sir. We are really grateful that in course of your busy schedule, you have made it possible to join with us and share your views on the important aspect of a brief explanation on stages of civil suit under the Civil Procedure Code 1908. Now, as we all know, civil procedure or civil cases have been always a bit complicated, and in course normally we find there are very few number of lawyers practicing in civil matters, because civil matters comprise of a lot of disputes which are pertaining to several statutes, several laws, several matters which are not generally covered under criminal procedure code. So today we have found Sri Chaturvedi sir amongst us. I am very hopeful that the students of our institution as well as the participants together will very much benefited from his extensive experience in the field of law and his eloquence in the matters of delivering lecture on the topic as has been told. So once again, I welcome Sri Chaturvedi sir, Honorable Additional and Session District and Session Judge of Kokrajhar, and indeed it is a great pleasure to welcome you once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Aditya.
Now I have the pleasure to introduce the two guests of honor before all of you. Sri Sondrosu Chaturvedi sir, he was graduated from Guwahati University.
Suresh, your audio is breaking. Please check.
Okay, sir. Sri Sondrosu Chaturvedi, he was graduated in law from Guwahati University in 2001. Before joining as an AGS in 2004, he was a practicing lawyer at Supreme Court for more than 2.5 years and conducted numerous cases to help the court litigants by providing legal assistance. Now, Sri Sondrosu Chaturvedi sir, presently working as an additional district and session judge at Kokrajhar, BTR, Assam. Now, I would like to request Chaturvedi sir to proceed to webinar. As from yes, now all yours, sir. I request Chaturvedi sir to proceed to webinar.
Thank you, Professor Basudhar. Thank you. Thank you. Am I audible to everyone? First of all, am I audible to everyone?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And my visuals are also clear?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me. And honestly, this is my first online session which I am conducting. I had been a trainer in the Judicial Academy, where we used to train judicial officers who were inducted in the service. But the classes were, the regular classes. This is one of its kind class, online class, where it seems that you are speaking to a wall. Most of the faces are not seen. I've been able to see Professor Aditya. Others are not visible too much.
Yeah,
And the
yeah,
session today is about CPC. Rightly pointed out by Professor Aditya that CPC is not evoking necessary interest among the lawyers nowadays. There are two reasons for it. One, CPC is not complicated in the sense it's as good as other laws like criminal laws, but the journey of CPC is a bit longer than that of criminal trial. So civil suit takes a longer period than that of a criminal trial. Not nowadays. Nowadays, several amendments have been introduced in the CPC, which makes the trial very fast. And the lawyers are also not interested in delaying, like the older days, in delaying the trial. So now the trials goes very fast. So it is necessary for the students of law that even during the stage of your graduation, when you are studying law, you should be very, very focused on learning civil law. Criminal law comes very easy. Criminal law has very limited options. You read CRPC, IPC, that's good enough to practice criminal law. But CPC is a bit vast and it's a bit challenging. And because of lack of lawyers on the civil side, more and more disputes of civil nature are being converted into criminal disputes. And that is where people do not get justice. So a dispute of civil nature has to be prosecuted in a civil court. So what we will do today is we will discuss the various stages of trial under the Code of Civil Procedure. Now, first of all, why do we need a Code of Civil Procedure? You see, there must be a distinction between procedural law and a law where there is no procedure. Say, for instance, in a writ petition, when a person files an application in the High Court under Article 226 or in the Supreme Court under Article 332, these are usually referred to as writ petitions. They do not follow any procedural law. They follow only the rules of natural justice. So therefore, in any administrative law, they follow the rules of natural justice. Natural justice has two principles. You know it very well. Hear the other side. And no man shall be condemned unheard. These are the two principles on the basis of which most of the tribunals, most of the summary hearings are taking place. But when it comes to civil suit, you have to follow a defined procedure laid down under the Code of Civil Procedure. You cannot evolve, each judge presiding over a civil suit cannot evolve his own procedure. He has to follow the procedure prescribed under the Code of Civil Procedure. A journey of a civil suit under the Code of Civil Procedure will lead to a uniform destination. Therefore, if I am a judge, I am following CPC, some other judge, my colleague, is following some other law, the conclusions will be different. So when the person comes to court, he needs this uniformity. So in order to ensure uniformity, we have this Code of Civil Procedure. Now, what are the stages under the CPC for the trial of a civil suit? First is, why should a man come to court? A man comes to court because he is a legally pursuable action. So, for instance, if you have a cause of action to file a civil suit in a court of law, that cause of action must be legally recognized cause of action. If the cause of action is not legally recognized, you cannot come to court. Now, say, for instance, what are the legal cause of action? For that, you need to understand a little bit of jurisprudence, law of title, law of property, law of possession, law of ownership, law of contract. These are all statutes, these are all jurisprudential concepts which create rights. So when a right is created in some person, if that right has a legal recognition, that right has to be respected by the other person. So if the other person is not recognizing that right, it gives right to a cause of action. So the first thing which you should remember, why should a person come to civil court, is that when a legally recognizable right is violated, a person gets a cause of action accrues to the person to come to civil court. Now, why should he, how and in what manner should he approach the civil court? He needs to draft a plaint. The manner in which the complaint or the pleading has to be presented in the civil court has been prescribed in the CPC. You see Order 6 CPC. Order 6 CPC prescribes the manner in which the pleadings have to be drawn. Order 6 CPC is common to both plaint and written statement. Plaint is defined in Order 7. Written statement is defined in Order 8 CPC. So, pleading is Order 6. So when we draft a plaint, we have to be very careful about our understanding of the Order 6 CPC. Order 6 CPC tells you what you should include in the pleading. So when you draft a plaint, read Order 6 CPC and then draft a plaint. So it must include the names of the parties, you are the plaintiff, and against whom the suit is being filed. So who can be plaintiff and who can be a defendant? These are all described in Order 1 CPC. So Order 1 CPC will tell you who should be a plaintiff. Order 1 CPC will also tell you who can be joined as a defendant. Order 2 CPC will tell you how the suit has to be framed. Now you all, if you have read the law of torts, if in your semesters you have covered the law of torts, you must have come across joinder of causes of action and misjoinder of causes of action. So for instance, if the vehicle has met with an accident and your windshield has been damaged, your headlight has damaged, your tire has punctured, and other parts of the body of the vehicle has suffered dents, you cannot file independent different suits for all these things. For headlight, one suit; for tire, one suit; for damage to the body, one suit; for damage to the windshield, one suit. Order 2 CPC tells you that you have to include all these cause of action in one suit. That is why Order 2 speaks about form of suit. How and what causes of action should be included in the suit. That is called form of the suit. Order 3 CPC tells you who are the recognized agents and pleaders. So if you file the suit, who will appear on your behalf in the court, right? So that is recognized agents and pleaders, Order 3. So you can engage a lawyer, you can engage an attorney holder, you can engage anyone else to appear on your behalf in the court of law. So that is Order 3. Order 4 is where will you file the plaint? Now you have drafted the plaint, but where will you file it? Order 4 says you have to file it before the proper officer of the court. Usually we call it Sirisada. So you have to file the suit in the before the proper officer. Now the suit is instituted. What is the first thing the court will do? The moment the plaint is presented in the court will go through certain things. Whether the proper court fee has been paid, whether the plaint has been drafted properly. If everything is in order, the court will issue process. What is process? Process means the summons of the court, directing the defendant to appear before the court and answer the claim of the plaintiff. So Order 5 will deal with process, that is summons. Order 6, which I have already told about pleadings. Order 7 is about the small thing which every lawyer must bear in mind while drafting plaint. So Order 7, this is what I am telling in brief, then I'll come to some important and relevant stages of the civil suit. So Order 7 is about plaint. Order 8 is about written statement. Once the plaint and written statements have been filed, different parties have appeared. Order 9 is about the appearance and non-appearance of parties. What happens if the plaintiff does not appear? What happens if the defendant does not appear? So Order 9 is about plaintiff and defendant appearing and not appearing, and the consequences which follow if they do not appear in the court. Order 10 is about hearing. This is the first hearing. You must have come across the concept of ADR, alternative dispute resolution mechanism. So Order 10, read with Section 89 of the CPC, speaks about ADR. So when the suit is presented in the court, it is the duty of the judge to first decide whether there are any scope for settlement of the between the parties. So that is where the ADR comes in. We'll talk about ADR a little while later. Then Order 11 is about discovery. Order 12 is about admission. Order 13 is about production of documents. Order 14 is about framing of issues. 16 is about witnesses. 17 about adjournments, and then so and so. Order 20 finally culminates into judgment. So this is briefly the scheme of CPC. So in order to understand the stages of various suits, it is necessary for each of the students of law to first understand the scheme of CPC under Order 1 to Order 20. Order 1 to Order 20 are basically the various stages of a civil suit. They are in proper order. The order in which this Order 1 and Order 2, Order 3 and Order 4 have been, all the orders up to Order 20 have been, in fact Order 21 also have been placed, are actually indicative of the stages of the civil suit. So if you want to understand the stages of civil suit, it is necessary for you all to understand why Order 2 comes after Order 1. Why the chapter Order 2 comes after Order 1. Why the chapter Order 3 comes after Order 2. Now this is the scheme. Now let me tell you what are the principal stages of a civil suit. The moment the plaint is filed, because along with the, I do not know if along with the CPC, Civil rules and orders are also taught in law colleges. It should be ideally taught. Civil rules and orders are basically those small rules which are not covered in the CPC, because CPC itself is very extensive. Now, there are certain things between the rules which are not prescribed in the CPC. For that, you have to read civil rules and orders. These are rules prepared by the Guwahati High Court. Each High Court has a different rules and order. In other languages, they also call it practice and procedure. So you read CPC along with civil rules and orders. What is an important rule of understanding how and in what manner plaint has to be filed is Rule 49 of the Civil Rules and Orders. So when you file a plaint in the court, what happens? What are the things which are scrutinized at the stages of filing? So when the plaint is filed, the first thing which the officer of the court will, not the judge, the officer, administrative officer, he will check whether court fee has been properly paid, whether the suit is filed within limitation. Limitation law is another law which comes into play here, because if the suit is filed beyond the period of limitation, Section 3 of the Limitation Act says that suit has to be dismissed. So limitation is one area which has to be seen. So court fee, if you come to court, if you pay, want your cause of action to be adjudicated, certain amount of court fee is required. It's very less compared to other countries, but even then court fee is required. How and in what manner court fee is to be paid? Again, there is another law, Court Fee Act, and then Suit Valuation Act. So Suit Valuation Act, Court Fee Act, Limitation Act. Three laws, whether three laws have been complied with or not. Sorry. Then, Mr. Istadar will also see territorial jurisdiction. Whether any part of the cause of action has arisen within the jurisdiction of the court in which this civil suit has been filed. So how will you ascertain whether the court has territorial jurisdiction or not? In order to ascertain whether the court has territorial jurisdiction or not, you have to refer to Section 15 to Section 22 of the CPC. So please remember Section 15 to Section 22 of the CPC to ascertain territorial jurisdiction. Then again, the officer of the court will also examine pecuniary jurisdiction. There are various courts of pecuniary jurisdiction. For instance, there are courts of Munsif, and then there are courts of civil judge. The court of Munsif can entertain suits up to 20 lakhs value, and civil judge from 20 lakhs and onwards. So if the suit is valued as 21 lakh, and the suit has been filed at the court of civil Munsif, the officer will return the plaint to be presented in the court of civil judge. So pecuniary jurisdiction is another aspect which will be seen. And then territorial jurisdiction, pecuniary jurisdiction, limitation, court fee, suit valuation. These are 5 important aspects which a lawyer must cover and bear in mind while drafting plaint. So I'll repeat, when the plaint is drafted, please bear in mind the law of limitation, the Court Fee Act, the Suit Valuation Act, and Section 15 to 21 of the CPC, and apart from any other special law which the subject may be governing. So if the suit is filed against the government, you have to comply with Section 80 CPC. So these are small things which will be checked by the officer. Now with his remarks, the officer will place the plaint before the judge. If the judge finds that, okay, all these laws have been complied with, he will read the plaint and then he will pass the first order. The plaint is admitted for hearing, issue summons to the defendant. So when the judge orders summoning of the defendant, it is the duty of the plaintiff's lawyer to submit copies of plaint along with the summons, those and the process fee. So when the plaint is admitted for hearing, remember 3 things are to be complied with. The lawyer, the plaintiff will have to submit the process fee, very less, maybe 3 or 4 rupees, duly filled up summons to the defendants, and a copy of the plaint. When he submits all these three things, this will be sent to the defendant. Now, there are consequences of not submitting these processes in time. How and in what manner will you understand what are the consequences? Please read Order 7, Rule 11 CPC or Rule 10 CPC. Order 7, Rule 10 CPC and Order 7, Rule 11 CPC deals with returning plaint and rejection of plaint. Ten deals with returning. As I pointed out, if the court has no pecuniary limits, if the court has no territorial jurisdiction, then the plaint will be returned. Go and file the suit at, suppose this cause of suit for which the cause of action has arisen in Guwahati has been filed in Kokrajhar. So the officer of the court will tell you to take the plaint back and file it in Guwahati. Similarly, for pecuniary limits, if the suit is supposed to be filed before the civil judge has been filed before the munsif, the plaint will be returned. Those things are governed by Order 7, Rule 10. Order 7, Rule 11 is a little bit complicated. You need a separate thorough session on this, but I'll just touch it briefly. If you read Order 7, Rule 11, there are certain reasons when the plaint will be rejected. First of all, it does not disclose a cause of action. As I said, if the reading of the plaint does not disclose that any legal right has been violated, that there is in existence any legal right or that any legal right has been violated, so the plaint will be rejected. When the relief claim is undervalued, and there are other things for which I'm not elaborating as of now because these are complicated, you need separate session for that. But if you read Clause F of Order 7, Rule 11 says, where the plaintiff fails to comply with provisions of Rule 9, Order 7, Rule 9 speaks of submitting copies of plaint and summons. So therefore, if the when the plaint is admitted and the summons and process fee is not submitted in time, the plaint will be rejected. So assuming that all this process have been complied with, the process is issued. When the process is issued, or the processes are again governed by Order 5. You remember, please remember Order 5 to find out how, in what manner the process has to be drafted. So when the process is served on the defendant, he has to appear and answer the claim. If he does not appear after receiving the process, the consequences have been provided in Order 9 CPC. So it's a little zigzag, but you have to remember, if you note down correctly, things will follow very naturally. So when a process is issued after the admission of the plaint and the defendant does not appear, the consequences will be followed as prescribed in Order 9 CPC. Now, if you want to know what is there in Order 9 CPC, let me point out to you the precise rule. Order 9, Rule 8 CPC or Order 9, Rule 7 CPC. So please read 7, 8. These are the consequences. This is provide the consequences. So if the defendant does not appear when the date is fixed for answering the claim, the suit will proceed ex parte. Ex parte means the court will proceed with the plaint as if the defendant has no answer. But he can again appear and file written statement that is provided in Order 9, Rule 9. That is a different aspect. What happens if on the date fixed for appearance of the defendant, the plaintiff does not appear? That again has been provided in Order 9 CPC. So as I said, Order 9 deals with the stage when on the date fixed for hearing of the suit, the plaintiff or the defendant, either of them are not appearing. If the plaintiff does not appear, the suit will be dismissed. If the defendant does not appear, the suit will proceed ex parte. So assuming the suit is not proceeding ex parte, the defendant has appeared. When the defendant appears, he will have to submit his written statement. That written statement has been provided in Order 8 CPC. How and in what manner written statements can be drafted? What are the grounds which can be taken in the written statement? And what are the defenses that are admissible in written statements? So along with the written statement, it is permissible to file a counterclaim. Counterclaim again is prescribed in Order 8, Rule 6 CPC, 6A CPC to be precise. Counterclaim is something that a person is claiming that I am the owner of the suit. And the defendant comes, he says, no, plaintiff is not the owner of the suit. I am the owner of the suit. So he can file a counterclaim. He can file a counterclaim that I am the owner of the suit. So that is a counterclaim. Or if he has no counterclaim, he can simply deny. According to the defenses available under Order 8 CPC, he can submit his defenses. So once the plaint and the written statement has come to the record, now the judge is having the plaint and the written statement. Now if the plaintiff and the defendant both are at variance, in the sense that both are in conflict, the plaintiff asserts that I have right, defendant defends that plaintiff has no right. So there is a dispute. This is called dispute. Please remember, when there is a claim and there is a denial, this is a dispute, and out of each such factual dispute, issues arise. Issues would mean when there is a question of fact claimed by one party and there is a question of fact denied by the other side. So there is an issue. Which one is true? The court will now have to decide. So how and what manner issues have to be framed? Please see Order 14 CPC now. Order 14 CPC deals with framing of issues. So issues can be issues of fact and issues of law. And what is an issue of fact? Issue of fact is something on which evidence will be required. Now, a judge has not gone to the actual place where the dispute has taken place. So he will hear the parties. So if there are 1,000 disputes, the judge does not personally go to each of these places of occurrence to find out what has actually happened. He sits in the court, he takes evidence, and on the basis of evidence, he decides what has actually happened. So issues of fact would mean, say for instance, the plaintiff is saying, I am the owner of the land, I am possessing the land. Defendant says, plaintiff is not the owner of land, I am the owner of land and I am possessing it. So who is actually possessing? Who is actually owner? These are questions of fact. Now if the defendant says, the suit is barred by law. Suit is barred by law. And he says that this is a particular law on which the suit is barred. This is a question of law. This is an issue of law. You have simply to apply the admitted facts to the existing law. While applying the existing facts to the existing law, you find that the suit is barred by law, this is an issue of law, and the suit has to be dismissed. So, as between the pleadings on the plaint and the written statement, issues of law, issues of fact arise. The judge will prepare all the issues. He will draft all these issues, and then he will place the suit for trial. Now, once the issues have been framed, the next stage is for trial of the suit. This is called trial. The suit has now entered the stage of trial. Trial would mean both the parties will be given an opportunity to adduce evidence. If there are, say, 5 issues, on the basis of 5 issues, the plaintiff will adduce evidence to decide the issues in his favor. The defendant will again adduce evidence asking the court to decide the issues in his favor. So this is the trial stage. Now the evidence takes place. Now evidence according to Order 18, Rule 4, it used to be recorded orally before, but nowadays the parties are asked to submit their evidence in the form of affidavit. So examination in chief is in the form of affidavit. Cross-examination is sometimes recorded by the court, sometimes it is recorded by the commissioner. So cross-examination takes place, and on the basis of evidence, court hears the arguments and delivers the judgment. So this is precisely the stages of suit. To repeat once again, when the plaintiff filed, plaintiff is scrutinized, plaintiff is admitted for hearing, processes are issued. In response to the process, defendant appears, he files his written statement. On the basis of plaint and written statement, issues are framed. If there are questions of fact and questions of law, Both the parties are given an opportunity to adduce evidence on the basis of to decide the issues in their favor. And on the basis of evidence which has come on record, the judge hears the arguments, applies the law, and delivers the judgment, which is mentioned in Order 20 CPC. So, this is basically the stages of suit. But these are the broad stages, as I pointed out. There are small things which keep appearing in the course of trial. Now, say for instance, plaintiff has impleaded two defendants to answer the claim. At the initial stage itself, an application may come up before the court saying that, sir, I am also party interested. I have also my right involved in this litigation. Therefore, I should be joined as a party. My rights are there along with the defendant, or my rights are there along with the plaintiff. I should be joined as a plaintiff, or I should be joined as a defendant. How will the court decide this application? Please read Order 1, Rule 10 CPC. Order 1, Rule 10 CPC allows the court to add or strike off parties. Those have to be necessary parties. So this has the power has been given to the court to add necessary parties under Order 1, Rule 10 CPC or strike off unnecessary parties. How to decide who is a necessary party and who is not a necessary party? This again is another aspect of law. To describe it briefly, one can say that a party is necessary without whose presence a suit cannot be adequately decided. So if I say that XYZ has caused harm to me, I am not impleading XYZ as a party, rather I am impleading ABC as a party. So XYZ can come to court and say, the principal allegation is against me. I have not been joined as a defendant. I have come to know about the suit. Let me take part in this proceeding. So court has the power to add him, XYZ, as a defendant. But since ABC is not interested in the suit, court also has the power to strike him off as unnecessary party. So Order 1, Rule 10 deals with adding or striking off necessary party. Then suppose as a lawyer, you have forgotten to mention a relevant and very material aspect in the plaint. Because Order 6, if you read Order 6, it will tell you how to draft your pleadings. And in the pleadings, you have to plead material facts. What are material facts have also been decided in the provided in Order 6 CPC. So, suppose as a lawyer, you have failed to incorporate a very material fact. There was a date or there was a particular land description which you are required to insert, which you forgot. Now the suit has entered the stage of, it has written statement has been filed. It has started proceeding in its logical course. Somebody tells you, or it comes to your mind, okay, I have failed to insert this in the plaint. Now what can you do? You know, if you allow the suit to progress with the incorrect pleadings, incorrect plaint, the suit will fail. You will lose the case. So there is a provision in Order 6, Rule 17 CPC. Please point it out, mark it, note it down. Order 6, Rule 17 allows parties, plaintiff or the defendant, to amend their pleadings. They can correct their pleadings if there are mistakes. That again is a separate topic which will need separate session altogether. Because even in academy, we used to take 3 months time and around 20 sessions to complete the CPC. So one session is not good enough to complete CPC. These are only appetizers. These are only appetizers being given to you, students. You take note of these relevant provisions and this will lead you to further studies. So Order 6, Rule 17 gives you the power to amend the pleadings. But then in the year 2002, because this provision was abused and misused by some unscrupulous litigants and lawyers, so what the parliament did was it brought a proviso in Order 6, Rule 17, whereby it prohibited amendment of pleadings once the trial has commenced. Right? So, once these issues have been framed and the case is set for trial, case is set for evidence stage, you cannot amend the plain or written statement. You can do that only when you convince the court that despite exercise of due diligence, this fact was not known to me. So this fact came to light only now. If I had known this fact at the time of filing this plaint, I would have incorporated this fact in the plaint. So under limited power, the court can allow you to amend the plaint even at a later stage. But ordinarily, all amendments have to be made before the suit proceeds to the stage of trial. That is, not after the framing of issues. All amendments have to be made before the framing of issues. So that is Order 6, Rule 7. Now, I've spoken briefly about the counterclaim, Order 8, Rule 6A. So what is a counterclaim? As I have already pointed it out, a counterclaim along with a written statement can be filed. There are stages. Suppose you have a claim that I am the owner. As a defendant, you say the plaintiff is not the owner of the land. As a defendant, you want to say that I am the owner of this land. So you can file a counterclaim. A lawyer can file a counterclaim on behalf of the defendant. But when will you file this counterclaim? It is not open for the defendant to file this counterclaim at any stage of the suit. He can file the counterclaim only along with the written statement, not separately. I mean, it can be a separate pleadings, but it has to be along with the written statement. Once you have filed the written statement, issues have been framed, it is not permissible to file a separate counterclaim at any stage. So these are small rules which are there in Order 6, Order 8, Rule 6A, and 6B, 6C, and all. There are several provisions of counterclaim which you can read for your further, consumption. And if it evokes any interest, you can read it further also. There are case laws also which, at a later date I can share with you. But these are important part of the understanding of the pleadings of the written statement. Now, under Order 9 also, there are important things. Suppose on the date fixed for filing the written statement, the defendant says that I am ill and I could not appear. And the court has proceeded ex parte. Ex parte means in the absence of defendant. The suit is posted for plaintiff evidence. So the defendant comes running to the court. You as a lawyer will have to advise the defendant. He comes running to the court and he says that, sir, I was prevented by sufficient reason from attending the court on the previous date. So definitely the judge will ask, okay, what is that sufficient reason? So that sufficient reason must be such reason which convinces the judge. So as a lawyer, you will have to draft the sufficient reason in such a manner that it convinces the court, okay, any reasonable man would have been prevented from coming to the court and filing written statement on the previous date. So if the lawyer convinces the judge that the defendant was prevented by sufficient reason from coming to the court, the judge can accept his written statement. So Order 9, Rule 7 is a very important aspect, and Order 9, Rule 8 has very important things which you should study. Similarly, Order 9, Rule 9 also, suppose the plaintiff has failed to appear on the date when the suit was posted for hearing. So when he comes to court, you will ask him, why did you not appear? The judge will definitely ask. As a lawyer, you will have to convince the court, sir, he was prevented by sufficient reasons. So always you will find sufficient reasons, good reasons, sufficient reasons. Reasons means these are reasons good enough to prevent any person from appearing in the court. So Order 9, Rule 9 allows a judge to restore the suit which has been dismissed. That is called dismissal for default. Dismissal is one on merits. When the trial court finds that the suit has no merits, it will dismiss the suit. One is dismissal for default. That is prescribed in Order 9, Rule 8, Order 9, Rule 9 CPC. When the judge finds the plaintiff absent on the date of hearing, it has the power to dismiss the suit for default. So dismissal for default can also be rectified by when the lawyer is able to show convincing reasons. So you must read Order 9 of Rule 9, Order 9, Rule 9 also. You must also read Order 9, Rule 13 CPC. These are also stages which come independency of trial of a civil suit. Order 9, Rule 13 CPC speaks about when the suit has proceeded ex parte and the defendant never appeared and the court has passed a decree. Even now, as a defendant's lawyer, you have a right to advise your defendant and file the proper application before the court under Order 9, Rule 13 CPC that why he did not appear in the court on the dates of trial of the cases. If you, as a lawyer, if you can convince the court can set aside the decree and restore the suit to file. You can now file a written statement and the suit will proceed as per the stages which I have discussed. So Order 9, Order 8, Order 6, Order 7, these are all important chapters in the CPC which you must read thoroughly to become a good lawyer in the field of civil law. Then there are other things also applicable, like for instance Order 11 CPC. Order 11 CPC deals with discovery and inspection. Let me, to be precise, Order 11 deals with discovery and inspection. What is discovery? It has a common meaning. Discovery means something which is not known to you. You want it to be shown to you. Discovery means a document or an information which is not in your possession but which is in the possession of other side and you want that information for filing or taking proper defense or proper attack. Defense and attack, these are two things. So discovery and inspection is one chapter. So for instance, if the plaintiff has relied on a document and as a defendant you want to see the document, what is there in the document? The defendant is not furnishing a copy of the document to you. You can file, as a lawyer, the defendant can file proper application in the court under Order 11 CPC that I need a copy of this document to prepare my written statement. If the copy of the document on the basis of which an allegation has been made against me is not furnished to me, how can I defend? So this is discovery, deals with discovery of the documents. So these are important stages which you must remember. Order 13 deals with production of document. So that is also an important area which keeps coming in the trial of civil trial. And Order 16 deals with witnesses. So witnesses again is an important aspect because witnesses prove the case. As Bentham had said, eyes and ears of the court. Witnesses are eyes and ears of the court. So a judge comes to a finding on the basis of evidence tendered by the witnesses. Now you have submitted a witnesses. One of the witness is a list of witnesses and one of the witness has an important document in his possession which supports your case as a lawyer. But the person is not willing to come to court. He says that it's a dispute between you and the other person. Why are you bringing me into the picture? I am not coming to court. Now, what is the course open? The course open is Order 16, Rule 10 CPC. So Order 16 is a list of, speaks about witnesses. You can apply for summons. You can apply to the court and say, sir, this person ABC has in his possession very important document which supports my case, but he is not appearing in the court. So I want the Honorable Court to issue process to the witness and to appear along with the document. So the court will issue process directing ABC to come to court along with the document. And if the witnesses does not appear, then there are penal consequences which will follow. Coercive action will be taken by the court. And the coercive action includes arresting the witness, attaching his properties, and a lot of other, fining him, subjecting him to penal interest, and a lot of other things. So these are things which you should remember. So I think these are briefly the stages of suit. Very difficult to convince each one of you about the various stages of suit. But as I said, if you have noted down the provisions and understood the scheme of CPC from Order 1 to Order 20, this will give you enough appetite to read the CPC thoroughly, and it will make an interesting reading, I'm sure. But CPC alone is not good enough. You must read CPC along with Limitation Act, Court Fee Act, Suit Valuation Act, and then the civil rules and orders to make a comprehensive understanding. See, there is in today's world, there are two groups of people. One is informed group of people, one is not informed group of people. Those who are informed group of people, they are skillful, they will make advancement in life. And those who are not informed group of people, they will rely on the informed group to give them feeders. So it is for you to decide on which side you want to be. I would wish you to be on the informed category of people. Acquire more and more information, because the world is moving towards acquiring information. If you are lagging behind in acquisition of information, you are lagging behind everything. So that's all from me. If there are questions, I think I have I have 10-15 minutes left. If there are questions, it can be pointed to me. And if there are queries and if they have created more further
sir.
doubts, I'll be happy to take another session to clear those doubts. Thank you. Yes.
There is one query from the one student, Shilpa Moore. She wants to know about the interrogatory, sir.
Okay, interrogators, as I said, Order 11 CPC. As I said, discovery of investigation. Interrogatories means, say for instance, there is a dispute, factual dispute between two parties, plaintiff and the defendant. And the defendant wants to elicit certain admissions, or the plaintiff wants to admit certain admissions. See, admissions are important aspects of evidence. So, if I'm making a claim and the other side is admitting that claim, it relieves me of proving that fact in the court of law. Understood? So if my claim is admitted, I'm not required to prove it by independent evidence. So interrogatories are one of the modes of eliciting admission. So a party can submit certain questions. Interrogatories means certain interrogation marks. These are all British expression, but not very complicated. These are simple questions. Do you admit these things? Do you admit these things? Do you admit these things? One side can submit a set of questions through the court on the other side, asking for his answers. If he admits, other side admits those questions, it relieves the party of proving those facts in the court of law. If he denies it, then the party is at least now clear that, okay, the other party is denying these facts, so I'll be required to prove it in the court of law. So these are interrogatories. These are governed by Order 11 CPC. Is it clear to you, or you need further clarification? You see,
thank you, sir.
Order 11, Rule 1, 2, 3, 4, these are all interrogatories.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable speech and enlightening to us. Now, I would like to request Ms. Duhita Sorgeri, one of my colleagues, to give a vote of thanks of today's webinar.
Okay, thank you, Suresh. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. It's a privilege. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks and acknowledge the contribution of our guest speaker for such a wonderful explanation about the topic. And today we had the opportunity to hear your thoughts, and this is definitely encouraging us in our future events. Your thoughts have enlightened our minds, and shown us a new path. Thanks to the speaker, sir, for adorning the occasion and sharing his opinion today. Now, I would like to express my gratitude to our principal, Madam Ms. Prita Brahma, for her constant support and cooperation for the session. In addition, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to the organizing committee, IQAC Kokrajhar Law College, for such a wonderful initiative to conduct this online lecture series for the benefit of the students as well as for the faculty members. Finally, I convey my thanks to all the participants for your patience and attending the session enthusiastically. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining the session. Over to you, Suresh.
Sir, here.
Thank you.
Uh, okay, so even after the vote of thanks, there is one small query from Sanjay Sharma. He is an advocate as well as a teacher in Gwalpara Law College.
I know him. I think I know him.
Okay, okay. So Sanjay Sharma sir has put a query as in, is there any limitation to file the counter claim if the counter claim have not been filed along with the written statement?
Limitation for filing counterclaim.
Yes, if it is not filed along with the written statement, whether it can be filed.
It can be filed, but the court has to be mentioned that along with the written statement also I am filing another counterclaim, because what happens is this: sometimes the court has the power to exclude the counterclaim. Court has the, if you see Order 8, Rule 6, let me take out the provision. Order 8, Rule 6. 6C, exclusion of counterclaim. So court has the power to direct that, okay, this counterclaim will not be tried along with this suit. It has to be registered as a separate suit. So in that situation, it becomes difficult when the counterclaim has been filed along with the suit. So with the permission of the court, a separate set of pleadings can be filed along with the written statement. But once the written statement has been filed and the suit has been proceeded at the stage of trial, if no leave of the court was taken at the stage of filing written statement, then I think it is not permissible to file counterclaim at a later stage. It has to be filed along with the written statement, or if not filed along with the written statement, a permission of the court has to be taken that I am also filing a counterclaim. But without permission of the court, at a later stage, it cannot be filed. There is a case law. If you is a lawyer, you can refer to a case law. I do not have the citation as of now, but if you refer to Anil Panjwani versus Ramesh Chand Ardhavatia, if I can write here, can I write here?
Yes, sir. Anil Panjwani.
This is, I remember loosely. The plaintiff, the parties, maybe you can swap the party. Maybe Ramesh is the plaintiff and Anil is the other side. But basically, they are the parties. Anil Panjwani versus Ramesh Chand are the party. Is it there, visible to all? The names of the party?
Yes, Anil Panjwani versus Ramesh Chand Ardhavatia.
If you Google it, you can find it.
2003, I guess.
Yes, 2003 case. This is judgment by Justice Lahoti, if I remember. One of the most beautiful, Justice Lahoti, very wonderful judgment. These are stages in which counterclaim can be filed has been mentioned.
Okay, sir.
There is also Order 8, Rule 9, which speaks about subsequent pleadings with the leave of the court. I think this also should be pointed out. Order 8, Rule 9. No pleading subsequent to written statement of a defendant other than by way of defense to set off or counterclaim shall be presented except by the leave of the court, and upon such terms as the court thinks fit. But the court may at any time require a written statement or additional WS from any of the parties. So Order 8, Rule 9 is the answer to the query precisely, along with the case law.
Okay. Sanjay Sharma, I hope, I guess you know it very well already, but for the benefit of the students, he must have put a query on his behalf. So thank you, Sanjay Sharma sir, for joining us. Your query
Thank you.
definitely help us.
Thank you, sir.
How's your father, Sanjay?
Yes, he's quite okay, sir. So after so many times, I can see you, sir. So I'm facing a
It's good
problem
to
in a
hear from
suit.
you also.
I'm facing a
Okay,
problem regarding the counterclaim because some new facts has been that is come to my knowledge subsequently. So it needs to be filed a counterclaim. So whether that can be filed subsequently or not, that's the query for me.
Okay. Okay, then if it is enough, then I'll bid goodbye to all of you.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We hope to meet you again in different platforms sometime soon.